Hey, BCista, and welcome to week 6 of the WDC. Right now, we're currently 4-1. We have locked in playoffs, and we are hoping to win the last 2 weeks in order to finish with the first overall seed, in which it's guaranteed if we win our final two matches. And if we lose, there's almost a certain chance that we are not first seed. Um, and in our way, we have a very strong coach in Gert, the coach of the Old English Eiscues, who is currently the first overall team. And so definitely a tough opponent. So looking at their team, we can see they have very strong Pokemon. They have double Fake Out with Palmot and Tinkaton. They got Redirection with Volcarona that can also threaten as a um, Quiver Dance Sweeper. In addition, they have Tatsuguri, which is really annoying for me because I don't have a fairy Pokemon. So the dragon coverage is really good. And in addition to that, the Storm Drain ability is really painful for my Dondozo specifically. In addition, they have Dragapult, which can be both physical or special, and outspeeds my entire team with pretty much no bulk investment. And then in addition, they have Garganackle. So the second time I have to play against the Salt Sack Pokemon with Salt Cure and whatnot. And so one of the big things we can kind of see, which I think I'm going to lean a little bit into, is the fact that their team doesn't have the best slow mode. Their only slow mode is really Garganackle, which Garganackle is, though is very hard to deal with and very annoying. It doesn't put on the most immediate pressure. The only thing that puts a lot of immediate pressure onto it is if I have a water or steel Pokemon, specifically with Salt Cure. And with that, here's what I ended up bringing. So we start off with Bombardier. So Bombardier is Focus Sash to be able to take hits from something like Palmot and whatnot. We have the Rock Slide to be able to kill the Volcarona if it doesn't Terra or and do a little damage if they have Rage Powder. We got Sucker Punch and Knockoff, just as powerful stab moves, and then Drill Run to hit specifically Tinkaton, which can't really hit with either of those previous moves. Other than that, we just Terra Ground just to get a little bit more damage in the Drill Runs and to be possibly immune to an electric move. Um, Next up, we have Arctobax. Arctobax helps do good damage into Tatsuguri with Dragon Claw. We can Terra Steel it to make it take resisted damage from Dragon moves. Also lets you do resisted damage from Rock moves. And so, Arctobax with Dragon Claw, Icicle Crash, and Brick Break can just do pretty good damage to most things. And with the EV Light, it can be really bulky. In addition, the thermal energy lets us not be able to get burned by Volcarona, and also lets us be able to have a reasonable switch in where we can get an attack boost into that. Next up, we have the Dondozo. So the Dondozo, we ended up doing Covert Cloak, so it doesn't get hit with that Salt Cure. So because Salt Cure does even more damage to water move Pokemon. So that's kind of one of the ideas, and it's unaware specifically to ignore both Quiver Dances and Iron Defenses from Volcarona and Garganackle. We have Wave Crash with Terra Water in order to one-hit KO Garganackle, and also to one-hit KO Volcarona. And then we have the Outrage to get the one-hit KO onto the Tatsuguri, because Tatsuguri is definitely a big threat. And then the Earthquake just for some spread damage to get around the Rage Powder, and they to deal with some of their ground weak mons, which they have a fair number. So the big idea with Ondos is try to get into Trick Room and either kill the big threats or get into an end game against Garganackle. Next up, we have Farafarig. Farafarig is Armortel. Armortel, though, can be a little bit awkward because if their Tinkaton is Mold Breaker, it actually can fake out even though Armor Shell is up. In addition, I have the Mental Herb though, so can't be faked out except by Tinkaton, and they can't be taunted because of the Mental Herb. We're Terra Fairy in order to take, like moves from super effective. Typically, if you Terra Fairy on turn one, it's very hard for them to prevent me from setting it up unless they make the strong read that I am going to Terra there. We just go Trick Room, Shadow Ball, and Dazzling Gleam, which hits everything for at least neutral. And then we decided to go with Calm Mind as the last move just to be able to get a little bit special attack and special defense boost. One of the downsides of Farafarig this season so far is that it's been able to get Trick Room up pretty consistently if I wanted to. However, it's been doing very lacking in damage. So the hope is with the Calm Mind, we are able to do that. Next up, we have Skeledirge. So once again, another unaware. We actually did all 3 of our unaware mons this week because I do not want to deal with Iron Defense, Body Press, Garganacle, and I don't want to deal with Quiver Dance, Volcarona, or Quiver Dance, Oricorio. And so with the Assault Vest, we give it Terra Fairy in order to specifically deal fairy coverage into the Tatsuguri and the Dragapult, because those are some really annoying Pokemon. The Terra Fairy, though, isn't the best defensive into a lot of these things, it does remove pretty much all of my weaknesses, and specifically the dark gives me a dark resist. We have the Torch Song, just as good move, the Earth Power to hit some of the ground weakness, Shadow Ball to hit some of those, and then the Terra Blast specifically for the Tatsuguri because I want to be able to do massive damage to the Tatsuguri. Like I said, the big idea is that Tatsuguri is the biggest threat into Skeledirge if I don't Terra, and so I could have Terra'd into something like Terra, Grass or something like that to resist it a little bit more, but I decided to Fairy so I could attack it offensively in addition to resisting some of its coverage moves, or at least not taking super effective. And finally is Clodsire, which is kind of my more unsure about set. So the Clodsire is unaware instead of Water Absorb, even though Water Absorb probably seems like a good idea. We have Citrus Berry with Stockpile, Toxic, Recover, and Body Press. So the idea is we can get some stockpiles up, increasing my physical and special defense, and Body Press is then going to do more damage, and I should be able to take a lot of hits pretty well with the stockpile boost, and I can recover off the extra damage. The Citrus Berry lets me take the first couple hits before I get the stockpile up, and then Toxic should pretty much kill everything that I care about. And then Body Press hits the Pokemon that are immune to Toxic, specifically their Steel Pokemon and their Rock Pokemon, because Garganacle can't be statused, and their Steel Pokemon obviously is immune to Toxic. And so that's kind of the idea. Like I said, I think I ended up forgetting to change its Terra type, and I think I just left it as it is. I don't think there's a chance I'm likely going to Terra, so it's not the end of the world, but probably should be a different Terra type than what it is. But anyways, with that, let's get into the match. So here we are for game 1. So looking at my opponent's team, the big thing that they brought that I wasn't really expecting to see was the Donphan, and I was kind of a little bit surprised not to see specifically Dragapult. And so I decided to just start off with the Bombardier and the Farafrig. I think Bombardier is a good partner next to Farafrig. It threatens a lot of these Pokemon for good damage, especially with like the Terra Ground, or knockoff and Rock Slides. And I also think Dondozo seems 100% necessary to deal with Volcarona, the Garganacle, and the Donphan. And then the final Pokemon is kind of just between the final 3. I can see an argument for all 3 of them. The Arctobax seems good offensively into a lot of these, but defensively is a little bit questionable. And I, before I just kind of decided that I might as well just go with Skeledirge instead. Though Skeledirge is not as good offensively, it's a little bit better defensively, especially with the Assault Vest, and still threatens a fair number of these, especially with Terra Fairy. It kind of hits almost everything for super effective. And so with that, let's get into the match. So my opponent leads Tinkaton and Volcarona, and I lead the Bombardier Farafrig. So definitely not the worst lead for me. And they revealed Mold Breaker on Tinkaton, which means they can fake out. And so I decided to just go for the Rock Slide, which would kill Volcarona if it connects, and then just go for a Trick Room. I expect them to just fake out the Farafrig here, and then probably go for a Terra and maybe try to kill the Bombardier, but I'm pretty fine with that exchange. However, they end up faking out the Bombardier, which I definitely wasn't expecting, and they just go for a Quiver Dance, which honestly is not that bad of a deal because I do have 2 unaware Pokemon in the back, which means if I can switch into either of these or either of these get killed, I get a free switch in, or free Pokemon that ignores that boost. And we were able to get Trick Room up fairly free. So now Bombardier might be the slowest Pokemon on the field, and I decided to just go for a Rock Slide again and decide to get a Calm Mind up. I think the Calm Mind should basically make me be able to survive any attack from the Volcarona, and I'm expecting a Protect from Volcarona, maybe a Switch, and here just going to go for like a Rock Slide to get a little chip into any switch in and punish Volcarona if it doesn't switch out or Terra. So they end up protecting Volcarona, which is not too surprising. One of the reasons why we went for the Calm Mind here. And we're able to get to +1 attack, or +1 special attack with +1 special defense. And we're kind of just expecting Bombardier to die, which honestly is kind of what we want to happen so that we can get one of our unaware Pokemon to come in and threaten this Volcarona. Um, and we get okay damage with the Rock Slide. Definitely not the best because it's resisted. However, we flinch Tinkaton, which is kind of a mixed bag. I don't lose a Pokemon here because I imagine they're just going to kill it. However, we do end up getting the situation where we don't get the free switch in. And so here, I decided to just go for a Shadow Ball and to the Tinkaton to try to get a little damage and go for the Rock Slide to try to kill the Volcarona if it doesn't Terra. They end up switching out into the Garganackle, which means that I definitely made the wrong choice because it resists Ghost moves, the Garganackle, and they end up tearing their Volcarona here. And they end up tearing into Terra Rock. However, for reference, I honestly did not realize this in the moment. I actually thought this was Terra Ground because that little thing looks like ground to me in general. It looks like and so I actually have no idea that it's Terra Rock right now. Um, and so my Rock Slide does pretty good damage. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so surprised it did so much damage because ground shouldn't resist or ground resist rock. And so definitely a little bit funny there. However, they get a crit, which definitely is really sad for me because it kills the Ferafric, which 100% would not have died if it didn't get crit. However, I don't feel too badly because I do get a free switch in here. And to Dondozo, in which Dondozo threatens both of these with one-hit KOs if I Terra Water. And so here, I am debating on just going for a Sucker Punch, expecting to die. However, I decided to go for the knockoff into Volcarona because I should take an attack from Garganackle. And I considered going for Terra Water or Wave Crash to get the one-hit KO into Garganackle. But instead, I decided to just go for an Earthquake to play around a possible switch into Tatsugiri specifically. And so they end up protecting Volcarona, which definitely makes sense. And our Earthquake, ends up not doing any damage to the Volcarona or my Bombardier, which is pretty good, and it should do, okay damage into the Garganackle here, in which we see, it ends up doing like, maybe like 30-ish%. And they just go for a Salt Cure into Bombardier, which does a lot of damage and activates the Salt Cure, so I'm slowly going to be dying. And, they also reveal that they're leftovers on the Garganackle. And so now, Trick Room is definitely being stalled out, but we're not in the worst shape. Even though Bombardier is slowly dying, we're in pretty reasonable shape because Dondozo threatens both these Pokemon. And so I'm considering going for the knockoff into the spot and the Earthquake, try to get a double knockout here. However, I think that Garganackle is likely just going to go for another Salt Cure on Bombardier, get the kill on me. And so I decide to go for a Sucker Punch to play around the um, Salt Cure on the Garganackle and just go for another Earthquake. Like I said, I definitely considered going for a Wave Crash, trying to get the one-hit KO onto one of these two Pokemon. However, it's a little bit risky, so like I said, I just go for the Sucker Punch Earthquake. And so they do in fact switch out the Volcarona, which means that into a Tinkaton, which means I'm going to get an Earthquake, which is super effective into both these Pokemon, which is not that bad. However, the Sucker Punch doesn't go, revealing that they're probably going for a Recover or something like that. As we can see, though, this Earthquake does pretty good damage to both of these. However, with the recovery, the Garganackle is actually at higher HP than they started the turn with. Definitely could, if I did the little knockoff, it would have been a lot better. However, my Bombardier should survive the turn despite taking a little bit more chip here. So now Trick Room's over, and I decided to switch out into Skeledirge to survive the Bombardier. And I decided to go for a Terra Water Crash to get the one-hit KO into the Garganackle, expecting them not to switch out. I'm specifically expecting a Fake Out here, and with Cobra Cloak, I actually do not get flinched. And if I outspeed, which seems to be a speed die here, I should be able to get the one-hit KO before it even does any damage. We Terra Water the Dondozo, and they end up going for a knockoff, getting rid of my my Covert Cloak, which is really annoying, meaning that Salt Cure would actually be Salt Cured if I got hit by the Salt Lick. However, I end up outspeeding the Speed Tie, which is huge, allowing me to get the one-hit KO on Garganackle, and definitely putting me in a reasonable position. So they end up bringing out Volcarona here, and I definitely consider the possibility of a switch in to the Tatsuguri. So I don't really want to go for a don't really want to go for a wave crash, and so I considered clicking Outrage with the expectation them to switch in, and Outrage would kill either of the Pokemon if they switch out Tinkaton. I decided to just go for a Protect to play around this and go for a Torch Song into the Tinkaton spot. However, they did in fact switch out into the Tatsuguri, which means that if I did Outrage, there's a good chance I won the game here because Outrage would have killed Tatsuguri, and even if it's Focus Sash, I would have hit the Torch Song into it and did that. However, luckily for me, the Protect did do something because I do not take that Bug Buzz. And Tatsuguri takes so little damage with that Torch Song, but I do to get to +1. And so here, I actually realized that they're Terra Rock for the first time because the Torch Song is actually resisted. And this is where I'm like, oh, they're Terra Rock. Well, that's good to know. And so with this, I can just go for Earth Power, which would probably kill. And I decide to go for the Outrage because if Outrage kills Tatsuguri, I feel like I'm in a very good position. And if I don't kill Tatsuguri this turn, I feel like I'm in a pretty bad position. And I know Skeleturge can't kill Tatsuguri here, and I can't Earthquake with my Skeleturge out. And so here they end up going for Protect, and they go for a Hydro Pump, which ends up doing a chunk of damage, but with the Assault Vest, I'm able to survive. And the Earth Power goes here. And I think this game literally right now just comes down to me hitting the Outrage in the right spot and hits into the Volcarona instead of the Tatsuguri. Like I said, if Tatsuguri got hit there, I think I have a reasonable out there. However, with the miss there, I'm definitely in pretty bad shape. And so the best I can do is just go for the kill in the Volcarona with Earth Power, or I can switch out to Bombardier and go for an Earthquake and try to get a kill there. And that's what I decide to do, because and try to save my Skeleturge a little bit here. We switch into the Bombardier, and they go for the Bug Buzz into the Dondozo, which does pretty good damage despite me being pretty bulky. And they go for the Dragon Pulse into the Bombardier, killing the Bombardier. Honestly, I think I might have would have taken that attack. And so honestly, if I just went for Outrage and stayed in, and probably went for an Earth Power with the Skeleturge, I actually might have won the game there. It would definitely it would have been close, but definitely would have possibly given me that there. So definitely got a little bit punished for my decision. However, now we bring in Skeleturge, and pretty much our only out is either them making a misplay, but I think the real hope is that they go for Hydro Pump and miss, or and I can get the kill the Volcarona with an Earth Power, and then basically let them hopefully continuously miss and or be dumb. That's basically the out is them being dumb. That's the long and short of it. But we can go for a Protect and hope they can maybe double up, or I survive a Dragon Pulse or something like that. And the Bug Buzz does go into the Tatsuguri, or into the Dondozo, and the Tatsuguri ends up going for Dragon Pulse instead of Hydro Pump, and I end up just surviving because of the AV, allowing me to get the kill onto the Volcarona. So definitely, this is the type of turn that ended up giving me a non-zero out. However, as we see, it definitely there's still not much outs because they do have one more Pokemon in the back. Like I said, I think the big turn that this game came down to for the most part is that Outrage not hitting the Tatsuguri that one turn. But now they have a pretty clean just fake out into Skeleturge and Dragon Pulse, or fake out into the Donzozo and Dragon Pulse into the Skeleturge. But pretty much if they just fake out and attack, or do two attacks, I'm pretty dead. However, I just go for an Earthquake with the hope that I can kill both of them somehow, which maybe happens if I get a crit onto both of them. And so they end up going for the knockoff into the um, Skeleturge, killing it, and they just end up going for, and they also reveal my Salvage, which was a little bit sad, and the Dragon Pulse ends up just missing out on the cake, giving me some excitement. Maybe Earthquake can double crit. We do kill Tinkaton, but we don't kill Tatsuguri. unsurprisingly. Sadly, I think a crit wouldn't have even killed Tatsugiri there. So the game definitely, was pretty close. I think, like I mentioned, it definitely came down to probably, um, you know, one targeting turn slash, a 50-50 on an outrage. But I definitely learned some information and specifically how threatening Tatsugiri is into my team. And so with that, let's get into game two. We're here for game two. So like I said previously, one of the big annoyances last game was Tatsugiri. And so I definitely want a way to deal with Tatsugiri. In addition to that, I think I want to pair my partner next to Frafarik with a little bit more of an offensive threat that's also a Trick Room Pokemon. I consider Dondozo a little bit, but obviously it doesn't seem particularly good if the end up having Tatsugiri or something like that because I can't really Earthquake next to my Farafrig. And in addition, it doesn't do a huge chunk of damage unless I have water damage. And so instead of doing Dondozo, I definitely, want to have a slightly different Pokemon in the front. And then also in the back, considering kind of which Pokemon I like. And like I said, I was not a huge fan of Bombardier that last game, and so I decided to Skeldridge as my partner next to Farafrig, and I think Dondozo is going to be incredibly important, specifically once I can deal with Tatsugiri, so I can just do Wave Crashes unimpeded, because Wave Crash hits everything on their team outside of Tatsugiri. And then the big question is basically Arctobax or Clodsire. Um, I think the plus side of Clodsire is it's better into some of these Pokemon defensively, but it's mainly concerned is Donphan. But we decided Clodsire because it's fun and I haven't tried it out much this season. And with that, let's get into the match. So my opponent leads Palmot and Volcarona, and I lead the Farafrig and Skeledirge. So the Palmot can't fake out, which is a really nice thing here. And so I decided to just go for a Trick Room. And the big question is, do I want to go for a Torch Song or Earth Power? The plus side of Earth Power is probably going to kill the Palmot. The plus side of Torch Song obviously is I get a +1 special attack boost if I do it. I decided to do that. And so they ended up going for a Thunder Punch into Farafrig, which honestly does more damage than I was hoping because it's Life Orb. And the Bug Buzz into Farafrig, killing it. This definitely, possibly was my mistake. I could have Terra Fairy'd here in order to survive that double up, and definitely was a little bit punished for it. Losing my first Pokemon in turn one, and I did a pretty good damage to one other Pokemon, but definitely not enough to kill it. I considered switching in Dondozo, but honestly, Dondozo doesn't look the best into these two Pokemon here, and so I decided to go for Clodsire instead because it does resist all the moves we've seen from Volcarona so far, and the Electric Punch from Palmot, and then also just kind of annoys them while we can possibly get a special attack boost with the Skeldridge. And so here the big question is, do we want to go for Toxic or Stockpile? We decided to go for the Toxin Volcarona, try to kill it. And the big question is basically, do we want to Torch Song into Palmot getting a special attack boost, or read a possible switch out and go for something like an Earth Power or Shadow Ball? And I decided to go for the safe play and go for the Earth Power into the Palmot in case they switch out into Tatsugiri, because I would rather do pretty good chunk into Tatsugiri than take than get a second special attack boost. And so they ended up protecting Volcarona, which definitely makes it sad because I went for a Toxic instead of a Stockpile. In addition, they go for an Ice Punch, which ends up doing a pretty big chunk of damage into my Clodsire. However, Citrus Berry puts me up into a reasonable HP. And we're able to get a kill on the Palmot. Sadly, we didn't go for the Torch Song, giving us up to +2. However, I think it was fair to play around the possible switch out. And like I said, we went for a Toxic instead of Stockpile. I would have felt a lot better about my position here if my Clodsire was at +1 defense and +1 special defense. But now they end up bringing Tatsugiri, which honestly puts me in a pretty reasonable spot. I am not Water Absorb, however, I assume that they think I am Water Absorb, and in addition, I assume they're going to double up into the Skeldridge, and if I Terra Fairy, I think I should be able to take up the double up, especially if they miss a Hydro Pump, which Tatsugiri is mainly going to go for Hydro Pumps in this situation. So they end up using their Terra, and they Terra into Volcarona, making it Terra Rock. So with this Terra, I very much expected this to be a Terra Rock into my Skeldridge, which is pretty good because I'm going to lose my Rock weakness by switching into the Fairy type. And there's also a chance they might have even gone for a Dragon Pulse to make sure they don't miss. And if they went for a Dragon move, I'm in really good shape because I'm gonna probably kill this Tatsugiri and only take like 30%. And so they end up, in fact, going for Terror Blast as I expected. And the Terror Blast ends up doing pretty good damage, but like I said, about 30%. And they go for a Hydro Pump, but I survived the Hydro Pump, which is pretty exciting. Definitely happy that I ended up surviving that one. And we're able to get the Terra Fairy into Tatsugiri, bringing it down to what is revealed to be Focus Sash. So definitely, I'm pretty happy about the turn because I also get the stockpile up. My Skeletor survives the turn, and we're able to kill this, or bring down the Tatsugiri to Sash. And right now, I'm feeling really good because if I'm able to kill this Tatsugiri, Dondozo looks amazing in the back. And so I just want to do all things I can do to kill this Tatsugiri, which is just going for the double up here. Um, I considered going for an Earth Power into Volcarona to do some good damage into it. Um, actually, yeah, no, and that's what I end up doing. um, and so they end up going for Terra Blast, killing it. And here I'm a little bit stressed because if they decide to go for the Hydro Pump, I'm my my guy might die. However, they just go for a taunt instead of a Hydro Pump or a Dragon Pulse, which means I take no damage and the taunt doesn't do anything because I went for a body press instead of a status move. Definitely would have been really bad for me if they went for a Hydro Pump there. Obviously, it's a little bit risky because I could be a Water Absorb, so I understand the decision not to go for it, especially since there's no way in which that that Dragon Pulse would have killed Cloudsire from that range. And they revealed the last Pokemon to be Garganacl, which means this game is incredibly in my favor. And Garganacl pretty much does nothing to either of these Pokemon, and so I double up into Volcarona because Volcarona is the only threat. Once Volcarona go down, this game is pretty much over. And they protect Volcarona, agreeing with me that Volcarona is the only threat, and they expected me to go for the double up because, as I expected. Like I said, this is definitely really big that their last Pokemon was Garganacl. But Garganacl does not really threaten either of my last two Pokemon. Both my last two Pokemon actually can 1v1 this Garganacl set, or most Garganacl sets. And so, like I said, though I doubled up into the Protect, I don't really care because Garganacl is basically a useless Pokemon in my mind at this point. And so we end up going for double up into Volcarona again, trying to get that kill. Like I said, if it dies, I think this game is over because both my Pokemon should be able to kill because I have the Cobra Cloak to prevent Salt Cure on my Dondozo, and I have Recover and Body Press with the Clodsire to be able to take the residual and then slowly get enough damage to be able to get a clean 2-hit KO onto the Garganacl. So they go for the Bug Buzz into Clodsire, which honestly does more damage than I expected since I'm at +1 because it's crits. But as we see, without the crit, that does not do much damage. And another calc we see that's really nice is that Wave Crash is a one-hit KO onto Volcarona, independently of if it tears or not. And we were able to, take a little recoil, but we were in this case reasonable shape. They Salt Cure again, which does almost no damage. I'm already getting the passive damage, so it's not that big of a deal. And we get a massive chunk of damage because we crit. So multiple crits back and forth on this. A really interesting situation. But like I said, I am in no concern of our current position because I have a pretty much a guaranteed win because Dondozo should be able to kill this, especially since we are speed tying. And with the taunt wearing off, I can recover here with the Clodsire, and they have to recover or Wave Crash will kill. And they do, in fact, win the speed tie. They get the recover up, which means I'm not going to kill him this turn. However, Clodsire is going to get up to 50% HP, which lets us kind of get in a position where we're just doing this. And as we see, it survives, but almost died. But that was because it got a third crit. So many crits here in this game. Luckily, none of them seem to be mattering that much, because even though if they won a speed tie, they wouldn't die next turn from just the wave crash. Another body press probably kills them. And so here we take a little bit more damage from Salt Cure. However, I'm just going to go for a recovery, reading a possible protect from the Garganacl, and go for another wave crash, which should kill even if they recover. However, I end up winning a speed tie and getting the kill here. And so that ended up being a really good game 2 for me. Turn 1 went terribly. However, I was able to kind of position a little bit well. I completely, caught him off guard with my Terra Skeledirge, and was able to, get rid of Tatsuguri, and then Dondozo was kind of able to clear the back. Another thing that we see is that they're probably not going to bring Garganackle next game, because Garganackle was completely useless, basically, based on the Pokemon out of the back. With that, let's get into the final game. So here we are for game 3. So like I said, I do not think they're going to bring Garganackle this game, so that's the big thing I expect to be different. However, I honestly liked my game 1 lead. I'm expecting properly to lead Tinkaton again, and a good way to punish Tinkaton lead is to lead Skeledirge, because it's immune to Fake Out and also gets the fire damage, which does big chunk of damage into the Tinkaton. And then the AVV just definitely makes a lot of their Pokemon not do nearly as enough damage to it. And then, like I said, once again, I probably want to be in Trick Room, because Trick Room seems really important this week. And so those are kind of like the first big thoughts. And then the question is what's the best Pokemon in the back? And the immediate thought is probably Dondozo, because as we see, Dondozo is good offensively into everything. And it's only, other than Tatsuguri, and its only Pokemon that really threatens it too much is specifically going to be that Palmot. And so, we see we go with the Farafrig and the Skeledirge, and then Dondozo in the back. And then the big question is, what is our final Pokemon going to be, other than Dondozo? And the question is mainly is whether or not I like Arctibax, because Arctibax does offensively do good into Dondozo. However, I just decided to go with Clotsair. I don't know if there's much reason other than it did pretty well last game, and I want to see Clotsair a little bit more. And so with that, let's get into the match. So my opponent leads Volcarona Tatsuguri, and I actually kind of like this lead for me, with my Farafrig and Skeledirge lead, because here we can set up Trick Room, and we can go for a Terra Fairy Terra Blast into Tatsuguri. As we saw, um, Skeledirge can take that double up, and in addition, Farafrig can't will not be able to be killed unless they double up into my Farafrig, and so either I'm going to bring Tatsuguri down to 1 HP, um, for my Farafrig, which I think is worthwhile based on how good Tatsuguri is into this matchup, or um, I just get Trigger them up for free and bring Tatsuguri down to 1 HP. And either way, that's pretty good. In addition, they're going to have to hit a Hydro Pump to kill my Farafrig, because Dragon Pulse should not. And so here they end up going for a Terra Rock. I'm expecting to do a Terra Blast into Skeledirge, which makes me really happy that I decided to Terra Fairy, so that I don't take this super effectively. And as Terra Fairy here, we should be able to take this Terra Blast and Hydro Pump as we saw in the previous game. And I'm just expecting this to be a double up in us to get a free Trick Room up. However, they go for Taunt, which is huge. I audibly cheered a little bit here, because I have Mental Herb that is yet to be revealed, which means I pretty much got a free Trick Room here. And in addition to the free Trick Room, I also brought Tatsuguri, who I consider the #1 threat this entire game, down to 1 HP. And now it's in range of just getting killed by a Dazzling Gleam. Obviously, we got a crit here. Lots of crits this set. However, this crit I don't think mattered too much. With it being Focus Sash, I expect it probably brings down to Sash, even if that wasn't the case. So here I consider just doing Dazzling Gleam and going for an Earth Power into the Volcarona. However, I'm expecting a Protect and possibly even a Switch out. And so I decide to just go for a Charm or Calm Mind to get that boost, and a Torch Song. However, they end up staying in and protecting with Tatsuguri, which I think has yet to reveal that this set. But however, we are able to get a pretty clean Calm Mind up, and I feel like we're in pretty good shape with this Calm Mind. And though the Earth Power doesn't kill the Tatsuguri, it's not that big of a deal. I definitely think that Earth Power was wrong. I should have gone for a Torch Song. However, obviously it doesn't matter. And even though I'm at +1 special defense, we see that Bug Bust does an absurd chunk of damage. So here, though, we're just going to go for a Dazzling Gleam. The chip should kill the Tatsuguri, and if something else switches, the chip is nice. And then we just go for the Earth Power into the Volcarona, killing this. And I'm ecstatic that they didn't switch out the Tatsuguri here, because Tatsuguri down makes my Dondozo in the back be amazing. And I'm feeling very good about this late game, especially with this Earth Power doing a huge chunk of damage and Volcarona being really low HP. And so they end up just going for another Bug Buzz into the Farafret, killing it. So definitely the Calm Mind boost didn't end up mattering too much. However, I'm definitely okay with this because now I get to bring in Dondozo, who's going to threaten pretty much every Pokemon I have on its team. And they end up bringing out Donphan, and Donphan reveals itself to be um, reveals itself to lower speed, having room service, and so there's a good chance it's going to underspeed both my Pokemon. However, I'm okay with that because I don't think it has a chance to kill either of these Pokemon, and both of my Pokemon have chances to kill or do massive damage to these. And so the big question is who do I want to target where? And I decided to just go for a Wave Crash into the Donphan because that's going to be the most total damage, and then Earth Power into the Volcarona because that should kill Volcarona. They end up protecting the Donphan, and they also end up protecting the Volcarona, just stalling out turns of Trick Room here, and also kind of probably seeing what I'm going to do offensively, see if they have a switch for the following turn. However, I'm pretty fine with any switch in because Earth Power hits pretty much everything on their team at this point, and Wave Crash hits literally everything on their team at this point. And so I decided to just go for the same exact two moves. I considered, I checked the Pokemon on the back to make sure it is the case that there's nothing that can really switch into either of these, and I just decided to go for those. Obviously, Donphan's a lot more physically bulky than specially bulky, so maybe I should have switched up my attacks, but I think this is definitely the right combination. So they end up going for the high horsepower, and it does pretty good damage, but doesn't kill. And we're able to get a Wave Crush into the Donphan, just barely missing out on the one-hit KO. Definitely would have been really nice to hit. However, with the Earth Power, we're able to kill the Volcarona here. And so now we're in a 3v1, which I think definitely puts me in a very happy, in a very good position. However, we see here that Trick Room is over, which honestly is not too bad given the fact that Donphan is actually slower than my Dondozo. And so here, I'm debated between Earthquake and Outrage, and I decided to go for Earthquake because Skeledirge is actually going to be faster than my Dondozo, so it's going to get its attack off if it doesn't die. And if it does die, then Earthquake is just the optimal play because it's going to kill the Donphan and possibly kill the Palmot. And if what's it called? And so I considered doing the double up into the Donphan, or trying to make sure I kill the Palmot because Earthquake should kill Donphan. However, I decided to just go for the attack into the Donphan because Donphan is definitely the more threatening Pokemon. However, they just protect the Donphan, and they end up going for a Thunder Punch into the Skeledirge, killing Skeledirge, which is pretty good because I end up going for the Earthquake and not going for the kill on the Donphan, and this lets me get a pretty good chunk of damage, and I'm expecting this might even kill because Palmot is not the most bulky Pokemon. And we get the super effective Earthquake and ends up just missing out on the KO. However, now we have Clodsire and we have a 2v1, and I have a lot more HP on the board. Um, and so the big question is what I end up wanting to do here. And I kind of just want to Earthquake again. However, that does do a lot of damage into my Clodsire. I question whether or not that's the right decision because definitely there's an argument to just Wave Crash the Palmot to get a guaranteed KO there. However, I feel pretty good that I should survive any attack from Palmot. And I know Donphan underspeeds my Dondozo, and so I think the Earthquake is pretty safe, and I just go for the Body Press into the Palmot just in case. I mean, the Donphan just in case. They end up going for the Thunder Punch, which does a lot more than I was hoping based on how bulky Dondozo is. However, luckily for me, it does not kill, and I am able to get this Earthquake off and get the double knockout for the win. The Earthquake might have been a little bit risky. If I ended up not kill, or if they ended up getting a double protect with the Donphan there, the Earthquake might have ended up losing me the game. However, luckily for me, it ended up getting there. That was definitely an incredibly close match from Gert. I definitely think, they had some really good things. They solved out my Trick Rooms really well. I think their biggest, kind of issue ended up coming with their taunt on turn 1 of game 3 and just having Garganackle in the back of game 2. If they had any other Pokemon in game 2 other than Garganackle, I think they probably would have got me there. And similarly, if they would have gone for Dragon Pulse or Hydro Pump instead of the taunt on turn 1, I think they probably would have got me in this game. But with this, I'm really excited going up to 5-1. meaning that if I win my final week, I get the first overall seed. And if I lose my final week, there's still a good chance I'm top two and get the bye for the playoffs. However, with this, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for watching,